without the music, but while the officers are just getting themselves geared up, I'd like to welcome you to this July meeting of the Strategic Planning Committee. To members, officers, a couple members of the public down the end. A few housekeeping rules. You see the doors through are marked up, fire exits. The one which I always forget, mobile phones. Could I ask everyone, apart from Mike, to switch off their mobile phones, please? That's fine. As I said, welcome to this meeting. I take it you've all got your pile of paperwork, or you've seen your pile of paperwork. Without further ado, I will head into the agenda. And item 1 on the agenda is apologies for absence. And 2 that I know of myself is Councillor Simon Coles and Philip Ham, and they are substituted with Henry Hobhouse and Sue Osborne. Sue's not here. She sent her apologies, has she? Right, that will be done. Okay, thank you very much. Are there any more apologies, Angie?
Councillor Andy Kendall.
Yeah. Sue Osborne.
Yes, she was supposed to be a substitute, but she can no longer attend now.
Thank you very much indeed. Item 2, minutes from the previous meeting. As you see, there's only a couple pages of them. I'm not going to do them page by page. I think it's such a boring procedure to have to do that. Is it your wish that I sign the minutes as a true and accurate record, or is there any amendments from the floor that you wish made? Mike? Thank you. Seconder, please, from the floor. That's lovely. Thank you very much. Item 3, declarations of interest. To receive and note any declarations of interest in respect of any matters included on the agenda for consideration at this meeting. Andy?
Yeah, a personal interest in item 5. I know the landowner, but I have come here today with an open mind, so I will be taking part in any debate that follows.
Right. Thank you very much. Councillor Hobhouse?
I'm the divisional member for 5, 6 and 7. I therefore know all the parish council people and a lot of people in that area.
Noted. Thank you very much. Item 4, public question time. There is no one has registered to speak at this particular item. So without further ado, I will move on to application item number 5. And the application is to upgrade public footpath WN 27/4 and part of footpath WN 2311 to bridleways from the 303 Queen Camel to Sparkford Hill, Sparkford. Without further ado, I will hand straight over to Sue Coleman, the rights of way officer on this application. Thank you, Sue.
So these 3 items are to consider applications that have been made to upgrade footpaths to bridleways and to add sections of bridleway within the parishes of Queen Camel and Sparkford. Next slide, please. So we are looking at 3 applications that were made in 2017, 2018. Most of the routes claimed are currently recorded as footpaths.
Could I interrupt you there, Sue? Yes, I would, yeah, before you make your presentation, would you like to make the statement which you discussed with me? Thank you.
Sorry for the confusion there, Chairman. Before we get into the detail of the case, members ought to be aware that this morning some additional evidence came before us. We hadn't seen that evidence until this morning, and we really haven't had time to have a look through that properly. We've had an hour or so, and as a result, you need to be aware that we're not going to be able to offer you a proper view on that. We just haven't had time to analyse it yet. There's some complicated legal documents around settlement of land, which is a way that land can be owned. So I think members need to take a view on that as how that gets dealt with. If there is that evidence there, and I suppose the key is we're not going to be able to offer you advice on it yet. And it's unfortunate, but the question therefore arises whether members want to defer or not again. And it's particularly unfortunate because this has already been deferred once. But members I think members do need to be aware of that and how they want to proceed on that. And I don't know whether the chairman wants to come in there and offer some points of view.
Yes, I do. Thank you for that, Andrew. Sorry, for that, members. I mean, for members of the previous regulation committee, you are familiar with this application because it came before this committee in November. You're also, for members of that particular committee and new members, have been updated on the outcome of that meeting and procedures and issues which were followed up and reported back to this committee. Unfortunately, at the 11th hour, which as an elected member and chairman of this committee, I find unacceptable, information has come to light on this application when consultation has been ongoing since 2021. The issues mentioned at the last meeting in November, the procedures which were followed after that meeting and reported to you, and for information of this nature to come to light 20, I believe, and I stand corrected if I am wrong, not even 24 hours before this meeting was due to start, the officers have had sight of that. I find is totally unacceptable and disrespectful to the officers, especially in light of last November when it was mentioned, and the reason for the deferral then was for procedural purposes, which have been not addressed, but it's been reported back to you. So before anyone wants to start asking any questions any further on this, in light of that meeting in last November, I think it is only right from the chair, and I would profusely apologise if we take this route, because we have members of the public here who's come to answer and to speak on these applications, because it's time wasted for them and time wasted for our officers and cost and for everybody all around with this authority and members of the public. But it is with regret that I must suggest from the chair, and I will even go as far as to propose it, that these three applications are deferred to give our officers the time required to look at this new information which has been submitted to them at the 11th hour. That is a proposal from the chair. And just before it is seconded, I would just ask the legal officer if she would like to concur with the comments that I have made, and if there is anything which I have said inappropriately or incorrectly, or that she vehemently disagrees with.
Thank you, Chair. I think you've covered it. This evidence has come forward in a late time. It's not noted. It's in no order. It's extract. The officers, in fairness to them, even if they'd had it maybe 24 hours beforehand rather than an hour before this meeting, they would have been able to look at that evidence and give the members a steer on whether it's relevance or not to the applications that are being considered. But I think, Chair, the position that you've outlined is correct. We just, as officers, we can't give you any indication whether this evidence is of any significance to the officer's recommendation. And so, yes, I think a deferral is an appropriate course of action to be considered by members.
Thank you. Oh. Hang on, I'm having trouble here. Yeah, we're on now. Thank you for that, Joe. Henry, did you want to second that proposal?
I'm very happy to second it, Mr. Chairman, but I would like to make a statement.
No, no statements being made on it until officers have had time to,
I'm not trying to make a statement about the officers, Mr. Chairman. I'm
no,
trying to
I
make,
didn't say that, Henry. I
I'm
said,
trying to
no,
make-
no, please, no, I have no discussion or statement on the application. The information has come forward, and one person speaks and wants to make a statement on it, and I appreciate you're the division member. You will have the opportunity when it comes back at the next meeting to register as a divisional member, or even if you are a substitute member on this committee, to say all you want at those particular times. But in light of what has happened, I am making my stance as chair. I have proposed, and as you've heard, Henry has accepted it. I'm not accepting any debate on this application at all at this moment in time. Yeah. As such, it will be my duty now to ask members to vote on that proposal. So could I ask for a show of hands for those in favour? For those members who was here before, I remind you of what we are voting on. We're voting on to give the officers time. It's very frustrating and annoying, but I believe I will ask now for those who are against that proposal to show. So was it unanimous? Abstentions? Thank you. Abstentions from John and Michael. And Matt, sorry, Matt, I didn't see you coming.
Sorry, Chair, no, I was late. I didn't hear the beginning of the election, so I don't feel it's definitely played.
No, fine. Thank you very much. So it's 3 abstentions then. All right. Everything for the record, Ange? Okay. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And I do apologise to, I believe is it Mr. and Mrs. Hodder? I apologise if I am wrong, but on your waste of possible time you coming here this morning, I hope you do come when it does come back to this committee, and I look forward to seeing you then. You don't have to stay for the whole meeting. If you wish to go, I'll just give you a couple minutes just to get yourself and maybe go and have a look around Taunton. Yeah. 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 You'll be informed by our democratic services, and you were given the same rights to speak and everything else. But thank you very much, and I do apologise once again. Thank you. Just wait for the door to shut there, John. Don't want to shut. Fire away, John.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm just, so this evidence that we obviously can't hear because it's arrived late, I understand that. The comment that was just made by the lady who's just left the room was, it'll be interesting to hear it when it comes out, whatever it is. And what difference does that make? I appreciate I'm a complete newbie here, but and I appreciate it's late evidence and quite right, we should move forward. I agree with that, but I'm just concerned that if this evidence turns out to be crucial in a couple of weeks' time when it's been read through properly, what happens to the decision made today on 5, 6 and 7?
No decision has been made on 5, 6 and 7. It has been deferred to come back to this committee in its entirety. All right, but to defer it, the decision has been made to defer it. And as I say, it's unfortunate that you weren't present at the November meeting, but it's the right procedure to take to allow the officers the time to make a valid comment. Yeah, and that's what I've decided in consultation with the chairman and the officer. Thank you. See you put your hand up there.
Can I speak?
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask a question about a cut-off point for new information to be submitted, which clearly is up to the wire in this instance. Can we discuss at some stage, maybe not now, can we discuss that as a possible addition if there isn't a cut-off point, like 48 hours or 5 working days? Can we talk about that?
I will not answer that at this moment in time, but I have Joe, our legal officer, sat next to me. What I failed to say was, in the light of what has happened with this application, I will be asking for a meeting with appropriate officers, and I won't say who they are because that would be possibly one of the issues which needs sorting out, because as a councillor, an elected member, I think it's, I stress that it's my personal opinion and not as chair of this committee that it is inappropriate what has happened. But it's the right course of action to take. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's all. No more questions and on that. And I'm sure Joe is happy with the way we're going to take it forward. So with that, I will move on to item number 8 and welcome Alison to the meeting to give a report on the phosphates and work undertaken to undertake nutrient neutral developments. Oh, too many pieces of paper for a meeting. Right, Paul.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can we have the slide presentation, please? Can we move to the next slide, please? And the next slide, please. Right. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, everybody. This is a short presentation regarding my committee report, and it gives an update.
Could we have one meeting in the room here and, have the courtesy to listen to the officers, because when councillors speak, I think they're only right given the floor and listen to. So let's listen to the officer. So if you'd like to start again, Paul, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tony. Thank you very much. This is an update report on nutrient development while supporting housing growth. The report is structured around 3 river for the effective catchment areas, those being the River Brue, Parrett and Tone. Furthermore, it gives an update on where we are with our recent funding bid for £10 million of central government's nutrient fund. Furthermore, this is only for information, this report. Next slide, please. Mindful that I did give, and we officers did give a presentation to all members on the background to nutrient neutrality in Somerset. The next few slides should be familiar with most people. Basically, they give a background in terms of the issue around nutrient neutrality. In essence, in August 2020, all the Somerset local authorities, including the County Council at this time, and also Dorset Council, received an advice note from Natural England regarding the unfavourable and unacceptable levels of phosphates present on the Somerset levels and moors. This letter is related to the court judgment, the Dutch End case, which we talked about in the briefing. Furthermore, the types of affected development, new residential development, yes, commercial development, especially where it involves overnight accommodation, but also agricultural development and some tourist attractions. For the full definitive list, I would emphasise that you need to go onto the council's website to see the full list. Furthermore, in March 2022, Natural England issued another letter, this one regarding the River Axe. That's the River Axe that flows into East Devon and flows southwards. It affects certain parts of the Black Downs and areas around Chard. So we've had another letter as well. That affects the River Axe Special Area of Conservation, so the SAC. Next slide, please. In terms of nutrient neutral development in Somerset, as I've highlighted, it affects our 3 river catchment areas. They are hydrologically linked to the Somerset Levels and Moors Ramsar sites. I will show a diagram in a few seconds' time about the geographical extent. Furthermore, nutrient solutions must be delivered within the catchment area. What does that mean? Effectively, if your residential development or affected planning application is in the River Tone catchment area, the solution must be in the River Tone catchment area. It could not be in the Brew or the Parrett. Furthermore, in terms of the local planning authority, we've been focused on finding solutions in order to facilitate and grant planning permissions. That is what this report is all about. It's all around the statutory local planning system in terms of determining planning applications. Next slide, please. This diagram here is shaded in 3 colours. The red pink area is the River Tone catchment area. The large green area is the Parrett. The blue with a donut in the middle is the Brew. The red smaller sites are the Ramsar sites themselves, and those are the hydrological links that link the geographical extent. That geographical extent is significantly smaller than what was originally advised by Natural England. It reflects the detailed work done by Wessex Water, Natural England, water boards, consultants and the local planning authority officers in terms of looking at all the hydrological links that feed into all the Ramsar sites. Next slide, please. So where are we in terms of across Somerset? County-wide, sorry, I shouldn't say word county, Somerset-wide. We are updating the phosphate budget calculator. That was developed in early 2021. It is bespoke, it uses localised data. It is based on information supplied by Wessex Water and other local agencies. It has the permit limits of wastewater treatment works, the local geology, various other issues that affect the local creation of phosphates. Furthermore, the calculator is being updated by us and the consultants and also Wessex Water and all the organisations I previously mentioned. And it is also the preferred calculator, the approved calculator, rather than the generic calculator that Natural England have got. The Natural England generic calculator is for nationwide. It does not use bespoke data relating to Somerset. The update is nearing completion. When it is completed, we will upload it onto our website as we've done before. It will also be accompanied by a video explaining how the calculator works. In essence, it looks at your phosphate load in terms of current land use, proposed land use, and the calculations are done for you by filling in various parts of the calculator. Moving on, county Somerset-wide, no, move back slide slightly, next slide. Thank you. Moving on, we've had regular meetings with stakeholders throughout this process. We have monthly meetings with the Environment Agency, Natural England, Wessex Water and others. Similarly, we've got more recently our Agents Forum, Developer Forum meetings. They usually occur quarterly. The next one is on the 27th of this month. Next slide, please. Also, throughout this period, we have been lobbying central government, as the slide says there. Since August 2020, officers and members have been lobbying central government on a range of issues. I've only highlighted a number of the key ones here around funding, 5-year housing land supply, and the effect on small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs. All of our letters and the details associated with them are all on our website for you to see, and also ministers' responses and officer responses. More importantly, nationwide, we have been also involved in a High Court case, Jurston Farm, Wellington. This is a national test case. The appellants have appealed and their High Court challenge was dismissed, as summarised in the report. The latest judgment confirms the Council's approach to appropriate assessment applies at the reserve matter stage and also at the discharge of conditions. That does affect us here in Somerset because we have a significant number of planning applications. It also affects a lot of other local authorities as well across the country because they have not actually adhered to that approach in terms of the appropriate assessment and the reserve matters being caught at this stage. Next slide, please. Furthermore, the applicant has been given leave to appeal to the Supreme Court and we await the decision on this application. If it is not heard at the Supreme Court, the next stage will be the Court of Appeal. We have also, throughout this process, been what we call creating P credits. And as the bottom of the slide says there, 1 P credit equals 1 kilogram of phosphate moved per year. That does not equate to 1 dwelling. 1 kilogram will release varying amounts depending on where you are within the river catchment area. One of the biggest determinants is the efficiency of the wastewater treatment works. In an area like Taunton, typically 1 kilogram will probably release in the order of 10 homes. In a rural area, you're probably talking about a quarter of that. Coming back in terms of why the council have intervened, we have acknowledged the issue around SMEs, effect on 5-year housing land supplies, and also the fact that for small developments, their solutions, their on-site solutions are very, very limited. The council could have taken a position whereby it viewed phosphates like any other planning obligation, be it education, highways, etc. It's for the developer to sort out. But where you're an SME, a small, medium-sized builder on a brownfield site, your opportunities are very limited, especially if you were caught by the Natural England letter and your application was already live. Next slide, please. So where are we in terms of catchment updates? As I advised, we'll go by catchment area. First of all, the River Tone. The River Tone, as we all know, was in the former area, it's now Area West into planning terms, and it covers the areas of Taunton and Wellington are impacted. There are approximately 110 planning applications currently held in abeyance, and these figures and all these figures were at the time of me writing and Alison and other colleagues writing the report. So they're approximately 2.5 weeks late. We can give updates if you so require. Moving on, in terms of applications, these include applications for major development, 30, 6 applications at the discharge of conditions, and 6 at the approval of reserve matters. Moving on, this equates to approximately 3,000 homes, of which, as I said there on the slide, 1,000 relate to discharge of conditions and reserve matters. Moving on to the next slide, please. Continuing with the River Tone, the council-led credit scheme for CRE credits. We have been releasing these in line with agreed member recommendations. To those ends, round 1, as summarised there, will involve all minor applications, free use or traveller sites that can be implemented with 3 months. Round 2, we started to implement as well in June. That moves the threshold of applications in terms of size going slightly larger, especially where they exceed affordable housing policies. Next slide, please. In terms of progress, 53 applications have been offered P credits in round one. That's probably slightly higher by a few more now. 26 applications have also been received. In terms of the amount of credits released, approximately 8.2 have been allocated, and that equates to 36 dwellings. It emphasises the fact that we have been targeting in round one the smaller applications, the individual 1 and 2 dwelling plan application for 1 or 2 dwellings. Furthermore, currently there are 22 applications being offered in round two, and that equates to 160. So we're learning our experience of how to allocate these credits. Furthermore, there are 25 applications that may be offered further credits in round two. Next slide, please. In terms of assisting applicants, the council has prepared standard shadow habitat regs assessments templates and also section 106, because these types of applications historically haven't had to need or requirement for section 106 legal obligations. To actually assist in terms of administering the process. Furthermore, we've, as I said there, we've got templates for section 106, and we're also using the council's backroom office Exicom system. That's the system that monitors legal obligations for anything in terms of education, highways, etc. So it's a known system that's known to work, and it's got confidence of the applicants and developers. Next slide, please. Moving on, in terms of the River Brew catchment area, this covers 4 of the 5 main towns. The one that's excluded is Frome, because that's on the far eastern side. Moving on a similar vein, 67 planning applications are currently in court, equating to 1,100 homes. The council have, however, signed off and approved 3 planning applications. The first one is Yew Tree Farm there. That is a pig closure. That is likely to generate 48 credits, i.e. approximately 48 kilograms of mitigation per year. And it's been allocated for releasing in the order of 450 homes. Next slide, please. Manor Farm, Prestbury, that's also a farm closure. That's a significantly larger application. It's going to unlock approximately 1,400 homes. The second phase at this moment in time has not been allocated. Please bear in mind that both of these schemes are actually promoted by the developer applicant. They're not run by the council. Furthermore, the agreed amounts of credits, phosphate being mitigated against, have been agreed by Natural England and also secured by a Section 106 agreement. Next slide, please. Finally, moving on to the River Parrett. This catchment area covers a vast majority of South Somerset. It also extends into Dorset around the environs of Sherborne. Approximately 360 applications are currently caught. Furthermore, this involves 58 majors. It equates to approximately 4,500 homes. Importantly, 2,500 are at the post-committee Section 106 stage. Next slide, please. In terms of applications, there are also 5 applications involving 320 dwellings being managed by a packaged treatment plants or retrofitting water efficiency measures. Also, we're looking at schemes in terms of water efficiency methods tied to registered providers. There's 120 associated with that. And also 3 schemes using Albion Way, Severn Trent wastewater management. That is effectively a statutory wastewater treatment, but it's more mobile and it doesn't go through Wessex Water, releasing approximately 120 homes. Next slide, please. Then there is also N-Trade, and I think this actually illustrates the wide variety of solutions that have been coming forward in Somerset. We also have N-Trade. There is a pilot in the River Parrett catchment area, as articulated there. Wessex Water, it's an arm's length subsidiary of Wessex Water. Effectively, N-Trade acts as a broker. View it like a Dutch auction. It brings the private landowner who can provide phosphate solutions and the developer requiring phosphates, brings them together, but it goes to the highest bidder rather than what I articulated for the River Tone and the council scheme, where the council had prioritised the SMEs. In this situation, it will go to the highest bidder. Agreed terms with Entrade in terms of the first market round and catchment have been agreed by the former and now Area South. But for further information, visit the website there in terms of the catchment and market. There is a lot more information on the website. Next slide, please. Finally, moving on to the Government's Nutrient Mitigation Fund. In May of this year, Somerset Council with its partners submitted a funding bid. That funding bid involved capital 9.63 million and revenue of 0.9 million. That partners involved with that are Salinity Solutions, Wessex Water and a range of other organisations, as I'll come on to when I summarise what our bid covers. The main element, the first one, is the modular system by Salinity Solutions, and I'll come on and show a bit more information about that. They are using reverse osmosis. What's reverse osmosis? Effectively, it's a membrane that captures all the nasties. However, they've automated the system. They can mean that the membrane lasts longer, is more efficient, and we are trialling that. And I'll come on to that in a few minutes' time. Furthermore, we are retrofitting where we've registered providers in terms of water efficiency measures. So we're looking at council stock effectively, be it registered providers or the council's own properties. Similarly, sourcing nature-based phosphate mitigation with the Farming and Wildlife Advisory Group, FWAG. Next slide, please. We're also looking at doing a program of septic tanks because we know the cost of developing mitigation measures in rural areas is significantly higher. And if you've got poor performing wastewater treatment plants or existing septic tanks that are poor performing, then if they are upgraded, surely they are removing phosphates and therefore there is some mitigation that can be captured. We're also looking at in terms of land use with our colleagues in FWAG, and to those ends, the next bullet point, the third one, talks about working with sites, with advisory group, and also looking at doing a core for sites. Finally, we need to verify what we're doing in terms of the effectiveness of small sites. This is one of the issues, the lack of real-time data and local evidence in terms of what the attenuation measures actually generate. To those ends, we're working with Plymouth University to verify the effectiveness of small water attenuation measures for phosphate mitigation. The results will help inform, as I said, the catchment area and solutions within it. Furthermore, as articulated and attached in the committee report as Appendix B, I'd like to draw your attention to, we've drawn the contents of our bid to all MPs within the area. Clearly, we've got to send a new one out to the new MP who was elected for Frome and Somerton early this morning, isn't it? So moving on then, please. Next slide. Right. We have yet to have a decision from central government on whether our bid has successful. However, given the importance of trying to find mitigation solutions, it has been agreed that we would do an initial pilot, which is being funded by Wessex Water and Salinity Solutions. The next couple of slides there give just a broad outline of this initial pilot. As I said, they are trialling one of their units. Their units effectively come on a lorry. They are a container size location and they're a modular. To those ends, we are trialling the efficiency and also trying to then establish the actual number of mitigations, the number of units that we can actually generate in terms of P credits, but also the number of units in terms of the modules that will need to go on sites in various locations. Next slide, please. Right. What happens is effectively, you've got a chamber where wastewater goes out before it then goes out into the wider environment. That chamber, the sampling chamber, is where we're going to cut in there and then divert the effluent out into their modules. So they can then go through the membrane, which will separate out water from the brine. The brine will basically be the sludge that has all the chemicals. To monitor the efficiency of that unit, they'll be monitoring upstream and downstream of the wastewater treatment works, but also they'll be monitoring the content of the brine and what nasties are in it, be phosphates and everything else. In terms of viewing this on site. The modules are already on site, and to those ends, next week we've got a number of site visits with, hopefully with Rebecca Powell MP, and also various officers from the Department of Levelling Up Homes, Housing and Communities, DLUC, also DEFRA, our colleagues in Natural England and the Environment Agency. Prior to submitting this bid, clearly we invoked all of the statutory undertakers, Environment Agency, Wessex Water and others involved in this bid. That is why it is multi-agency. But as I said, this is an initial pilot for 2 weeks to try and establish the overall efficiency of the process. Next slide, please. So, coming to conclusions, I'm conscious I have been talking for about 20 minutes now. Firstly, the continuing need for foreseeable future to coordinate and appropriately resource mitigation measures in order to achieve nutrient neutrality. As I emphasised at the beginning of my presentation, this is all about unlocking planning applications. It's phosphate neutral. It is what it says on the can, making sure that new development is phosphate neutral. However, the issue will be that that does not actually improve the Somerset and Levels and Moors in terms of its ecological status. And that's why the committee report ends with the emphasis that more work will need to be done by our climate and change colleagues. Coming back, as I said, this is all about unlocking planning applications, and hopefully the presentation, the report emphasises that, and that clearly comes across. And it's in the 3 catchment areas of the River Tone, Parrett and Brew. They are hydrologically linked. If people feel that those boundaries are incorrect, they're more than welcome to put request it into us, and developers have done that via the phosphate inbox, and we look at each case on a case-by-case basis. To date, our work working with those who work on the ground has been robust, and we haven't amended it to date. Moving on to the next slide. As I said, restoration of the Somerset Level Moors remains on a whole variety of other activities. It goes beyond the land use planning that we are here today to consider. So in conclusion, I would like to emphasise once again, it's for the climate and change team to agree that the council may wish to progress programmes and also schemes which reverse the ecological status of the Somerset Levels and Moors. Alison, do you want to emphasise anything before I pass back to the chair?
Not at this stage, Paul, thanks.
Okay, so thank you very much, Chair. I'm open to questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Paul, for that presentation. I'm sure members will have some questions, but we try to keep the questions to the issues that the report's about and what we're asked to do with it. We're not asked to particularly find the solutions at the moment, to note the progress which is being made and maybe to contribute something towards that. But thank you for your report and update. Members, I don't know who was first, but I've got 4, so I will go for, sorry, you pointed over there, so that. I'll go first.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to our colleagues for that excellent, clear and comprehensive report. I shall read that again with interest later. I just wanted to comment on the allocation or application of the P credits, and I wonder if I could get some clarification at some point in the future regarding the idea that the P credit system seems to be unfairly punishing the rural settlements due to the historical underinvestment in wastewater treatment infrastructure. So somewhere like Taunton Yeovil would have 1 P credit giving us 1 kilo equivalent, but somewhere out my way, 1 P credit would give 0.25. That seems quite harsh. I mean, I understand why that's happening, because there's just fewer treatment plants. But I wonder whether it wouldn't be more fair, more equitable to sort of average the P credits across the county or across the Ramsar sites or the catchment areas, so that we don't have a bias towards the larger settlements. I mean, Somerset is a rural county, but we always, in the rural areas, we always seem to play second fiddle to Taunton, Yeovil, Frome and the rest of it. So was spreading the load across the county given consideration, or is that just not something that could be achieved practically? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think it's a good point, but it all comes back to the efficiency of the wastewater treatment works. And unfortunately, the efficiency of the wastewater treatment works in rural areas is not generally as good as it is in the more urban areas. And that's obviously because the investment has gone into those areas historically. And that's why we have the situation we have now. Unfortunately, we can't equalise across because each development has to be nutrient neutral. So we have to ensure that there is provision for each development to meet that requirement. So we can't do that. I think, I mean, and Kate's on the line if we want more details, but the Salinity Solutions trial potentially offers a great opportunity for rural areas, because if it is shown to work in the way that the initial results this week have shown, that will provide a solution for the more rural areas and not needing to provide as many P credits. Kate, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, thanks, Alison. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Yeah, we're hoping that if we're successful with the Nutrient Mitigation Fund bid that we've submitted to government, we can reach a point where we are removing the level of phosphorus within the catchment area at a strategic scale, and then we can arrive at possibly a standard tariff. However, we will need to do that in negotiation with Natural England, and it will be heavily dependent on whether we're successful with the entire ask of government, and when we know the outcome of that bid. But yeah, Alison's absolutely right that the Salinity Solutions trial at the moment is giving us some good results, and it may offer an alternative for some of those poor performing rural sewage treatment works, where I suppose the population density is such that it hasn't justified that level of investment by the water companies, unfortunately. But I think as well, we will need to do further work to lobby government to ensure that some of those are picked up, those sort of more poor performing rural sewage treatment works that fall below that population threshold that's been set in the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill. But there's more work to be done, and it is on our list.
Thank you for that, Kate. All right, Matt, I'm sure not quite what you wanted to hear, but it just puts a bit of clarity on it for you. Yeah, thank you very much. I'm going to move over to the other side of the room now, and I'm going to go to Michael.
Thank you. Yes, sorry, Henry. It's just the whole subject of the credits and the farm. I'm thinking in particular the pig farm that was taken out in order to give the credits. I just wondered if there's any way you could illuminate to the board, sorry, the committee, what sort of uses a pig farm would be put to after being taken out of action, and what sort of farms or land use areas will be taken up by these credits. If someone wants to retire and they've got a dairy farm, for instance, are they going to be able to enter that system and get their farm credited? I just wanted some examples to illuminate what's going on at that level.
Thank you, Michael. I'm not sure who's going to answer that one. Probably Alison. But
Gonna try.
Springs to me that is how long's a piece of string? But I mean, Alison.
Taking it out of use means taking it out of that farming use and probably putting it either to fallowing or woodland use. And it means it can't be used for those, because that's how it's generating the P credits.
Okay, so does that mean any farm whatsoever could enter the credit system and then be put to, as you say, fallow or some sort of, I won't use the word wilding, but it may not be appropriate, but some sort of worked out system that is better and absorbs nutrients? Potentially,
yes.
Okay, I just wanted, I just trying to get a mental picture of what happens at that level. Yeah, thank you.
Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wish to thank you, Paul, for your very good presentation. I also wish to back you up with the replacement of septic tanks with aerated sewage plants, which you are doing quite a lot of in my area, and I am helping to suppliers to deal with that. I want to go back to the basic pollution problem. You are taking your information, as far as I understand it, from Wessex Water. Is that correct?
We take our data from a whole variety of locations, not just necessarily Wessex Water. It's the Environment Agency, Natural England. The calculator does a lot of things in terms of looking at your load. We look, for example, in terms of localized rainfall, for example, data. We use a whole range of data.
Henry?
I've got more questions, Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, but I mean, there are other people that want to speak as well, but yeah, carry on.
I'll get there. Environment Agency use a modelling program called SIMCOT. The Wessex Water use a new computer.
Could I ask, I mean, I know you're very into the phosphates issue and that. Could I ask that you keep your questions strictly to the report that we received? And I know they're all related in that, but there are a lot of things with other agencies which are beyond our control. And I'm sure Paul or Alison will interject if I am wrong. And it's nice to be have it on the reports in front of us, because we're asked as a strategic committee to note the reports. We're not here to solve all the issues, because many of them with other agencies are beyond our control, irrespective of what we think about them.
Mr. Chairman, the whole basis of this report is on the information that is fed into it at the beginning. And if that information is not correct, at some stage, we have to actually question how we're dealing with the mitigation.
Do either one of you, Alison or Paul, want to just answer that briefly?
We're aware how the Environment Agency use SIMCAS, but also SAGIS in terms of their work to those ends. We're aware of what the limitations are. In essence, they use those models to monitor their statutory undertakings. Similarly, Wessex Water use it to monitor their statutory obligations associated with permit limits. And there was a whole discussion about whether the permit limits are at the right level. This is far wider. Now, if the chair wants us, or we agree that it would be helpful for Wessex Water and Environment Agency officers to come along to explain these models and how they use them, we're quite happy to invite and ask for officers from those organisations to come along if the chair feels it's appropriate.
I think, speaking from this committee's remit, I think that if the executive member, with further meetings and negotiations and briefings which are taking place, that something on that level could come back, because the phosphates is of interest to all members and not just specifically to this committee. And I don't know if Ros is online. She was earlier and she wants to speak on that, but I mean, I would think that would be the better approach on that one. But if you feel that there's something which of input would come back, that's fine.
The Climate and Place Scrutiny Committee have already asked for this work to be done. And my understanding is there will be officials from those organisations attending the next meeting.
Thank you for that, Alison. Henry?
Mr. Chairman, can I please propose, and I think I have a seconder, that this committee looks into the basis for this report, and I can give you a short thing on it, because both SIMCOT and SAGIS are based on a program called FishCheck, which is an agricultural program written in 2010. And that program states in black and white that you cannot use that program unless you have tested field by field. And none of that's been done. Hold on a minute, Paul. Can I finish what I'm saying?
Hang on. Can we? you address the officers sort of correctly. Like, hang on a minute, while I finish, realise you're speaking. This is your third question, which is fine. The officer was only going to address something before you possibly went on to something else. Let's just treat and speak to people with the respect they deserve. Please, please, Henry, come on.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I didn't think I was being particularly disrespectful. What I'm trying to say here is that there is a gentleman called Dr. Andrew Clegg, who has yet to be interviewed by this council, who has spent 2 years testing the Parrot River catchment area for phosphates, and his results completely contradict all the computer modelling. My request, Mr. Chairman, I don't have a problem having a meeting later with the officers concerned, if that's what you want me to do, but I have a seconder who will back me up to continue this particular discussion.
Thank you for that, Henry. Just before any officers in the room comes in, I have Councillor Ross White online, who I believe wants to come in and address some of the issues which you raised there. Am I correct, Ross?
Yes, thank you. I recognise the issue of listening to Dr. Clegg, among others. I'm also very aware that we have a scrutiny committee, this committee and others. And I think that outside this room, I need to have a conversation with Democratic Services as to how we resolve this, because yes, I'm very happy to invite people and talk to this group or any other group, but we just need to get it correct in terms of the governance, and secondly, to ensure as many people as possible can hear and understand what will be fairly technical discussions. And so if I may, could I ask that I take this away to establish how we're going to have a greater understanding technically of some of the issues and some of the contradictions apparent between data which is available from various agencies and data coming from academic research, and alongside what is potentially very good news with the trial going on. So not dodging the issue, but I do think we just need to sit down and include Henry in it. I'm more than happy, but we do need to think about how we handle this in a measured and sensible way. Otherwise, the very scarce resource of our planning officers will be forever reporting bits and pieces of discussion.
Thank you for that, Ross. I'm sure Henry will take you up on that. All right, Henry. I've got
You've got Paul.
Chair, can I come back on one issue about Mr. Clegg, Dr. Clegg? We have been in regular contact as officers with him. The last meeting I had with Dr. Clegg was on the 6th of June. I think you need to be very careful about extrapolating his findings across the whole of the river catchment areas. His findings relate to one particular part of the river Parrot catchment area. It is in a location where there are a number of wastewater treatment works that are unpermitted. Therefore, his monitoring, and he's been very clear on his monitoring, you cannot extrapolate it across to other catchment areas. A number of you will know that I come from a minerals and waste background. To those ends, it's no surprise when I say that the geology of Somerset is a wide variety of geologies. That geology is incredibly complex and also interacts with the soils. To those there's a direct link around the underlying geology and soils. So therefore, we need more information and more data. And that's where I am with you. I totally agree with it. And my presentation to you today emphasised the need for more information. So yes, I'm there to work with you.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Paul. Henry, I'm going to, I hope that answered just some of your points, but I've got other speakers. I've got quite a list here who want to speak, and I'm going to move on. And the next one is Councillor Hunt. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, very briefly, with 10 homes per P credit as an estimate in urban areas, i.e. Taunton, does that mean that we can, as councillors, safely say to it? I'm always being asked, well, not always being asked, I've been asked occasionally by residents before they put in a planning application, what is it going to cost me to get this credit I need? And I've been saying around 5.5 to 10,000, depending on the house, but don't hold me to it. So are we talking, I think it's about £55,000 per credit, isn't it? So are we talking 5.5-ish per credit? I've got one other follow-up question to that, Mr. Chairman.
I'd like to ask it at the same time.
I
and
will
maybe the
indeed.
Officers.
You talked about this, the new trial that's coming up, which sounds encouraging. The brine that comes out, I'm being very naive here, but the brine that comes out, what do we do with that and where does it go? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, John.
Let's deal with the brine first. Effectively, that's a waste product that can actually be processed because it's got higher concentrations of minerals like phosphates. It's going to be more economic to process that. Phosphates is a finite resource that's actually in short supply. As long as it's processed out of catchment, there's a market there, and to those end, Salinity Solutions are looking at that. But initially on this first trial, that's something that they're looking at. But as I said, this is a trial to understand the contents of the brine and what is coming out from wastewater treatment works, but it is actually a product. In terms of the cost, yes, you're roughly right when you say 53k for a credit. How much is that going to be a home? If you assume roughly, and some of the figures illustrated that in the presentation, that in a well-performing wastewater treatment locality such as Taunton, it's going to be around 10 homes. That equates to around 5.5k. But as I said, proportionally, it's going to cost more in the rural areas.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Next speaker is Mike Caswell.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to be a bit parochial if I can, if you don't mind. I represent an area within the AONB of the Quantock Hills, and there's still many septic tanks, some of which discharge actually into their own property, into their gardens and things like that, and are regularly maintained by the owners. Unless I misheard it, are you suggesting that all these septic tanks must now be changed? And so just a little bit of clarity, if you don't mind.
Part of our bid is working with a private provider. His program of activity is very much focused on performing wastewater package treatment plants and septic tanks. Well, if he's doing those for his customers,
yeah, hang on, on.
Sorry about that. If he is doing those for those customers, then there's going to be a wider benefit, not only to his customers, but for the local environment. And therefore, he's articulating, putting a part of our programme is for that to be captured in terms of creating P credits to actually release further homes. So therefore, he's likely to be able to do it far cheaper than we can currently under our current systems. So therefore, we see it as a win-win, and that's why it's part of our bid. But we know there's no enforcing of that. It's all working with a private provider.
All right, Mike?
Yes.
Chairman, yes. What appears to be missing from this report is Wessex Water adding phosphates to the supply. Is that because Wessex Water don't add, that they're denying that they're adding phosphates to the water for corrosion instance? Or is this something that they're just refusing to deal with?
That actually goes way beyond where we are in terms of the statutory planning system, in terms of what we know. There is a load of phosphates in the water already when it comes into their systems. So I would need to go back and ask Wessex Water precisely what phosphates they're entering and reasons why, etc. Remember, this is all about land use in terms of the phosphate load, in terms of current land use vis-a-vis proposed land use. If you're adding phosphates in to a development, then it's as it was before.
All right, Steve?
Can I come back?
Yeah, come back.
Well, obviously, if you're adding new developments, you're increasing the volume of the water that's supplied, and therefore, if it's being treated in the same proportion with additional phosphates, that's an additional phosphate burden because of that.
Their requirements in terms of the calculator look at the actual discharges into the natural environment in terms of their permitted limits. Each wastewater treatment work has got a limit in terms of the phosphate, in terms of its load, and also the quantity, and its basic belt and braces. They have to meet those limits. If they don't, they're fined. At the moment, the agreed improvements to wastewater treatment works are agreed by Ofwat in terms of asset management plan programming. Those anticipated improvements to wastewater treatment works, such as Wellington, which is in 2024, are actually fed into the calculator as well. So we also take account of planned improvements, but we can only look at wastewater entering the natural environment. What's upstream as always has a consequence downstream. So if they're adding phosphates into the water, they will have to remove the phosphates out. And to those ends, the fact sheets that they've demonstrated show that they're doing well beyond their fair share, according to them.
Thank you for that, Paul. Did Kate want to come in and add it online and just add a bit to that one, Kate?
Thanks, Tony. Yeah, I was just going to say that Wessex Water do add phosphates to drinking water. My understanding is it's to do with some of the lead pipes that still exist within the network, and some of those lead pipes feed to people's homes. So they're responsible for the main network, but there can be lead piping going into older properties. In terms of it being added to the water, the drinking water, as Paul said, we're concerned with what's being discharged from the wastewater treatment work. So that water supply will then feed into, as a waste product, into the wastewater treatment works, and then is removed depending on the permit levels of those wastewater treatment works.
Thank you for that, Kate. I've got a list of speakers here now, which I'm not going to add to. And just to let you know, Norman, I've got you down, but there's a couple of committee members which I want to speak first. And the first one I'm going to go to is Councillor Martin Well.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. One question really and one clarification. At the start of all this, when the memo first came out, we were told, I believe, that Wessex Water were going to build a new plant, but not till 26, was it? Yeah, have we got any information? 24, was it? I can't remember. There was definitely 26. Yeah, there was definitely, which would help with this whole problem. Obviously, I don't know whether there's any information on that. And the other point was, during the presentation, did I get it right that when in the two applications, the first one, you don't do the phosphate calculation to the reserve rights, and not. Thank you. Someone, yeah.
Martin, all right.
So I think what you're referring to, Councillor, and correct me if I've got this wrong, is that if you want to discharge a condition or seek approval at reserve matters stage, you are still caught by the habitat regulations. So that means that even if you got outline permission prior to the date we received the letter, and you subsequently seek to discharge a condition or reserve matters application, you have to comply with the habitat regulations, which means you have to do an appropriate assessment and say how you're going to mitigate the impact if you're within the catchment of the Somerset Levels and Moors.
Well, sort of, but I really think if someone put in an application, and do they have to put in their calculation at the first stage, or do they have to? Does it come in when you do the permitted rights?
It comes in
outline, right? If you do an outline application, do you have to do the calculation?
Yes.
Yeah, that's yeah. It wasn't clear on the slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. I've got two speakers who've already spoken on my list here, so I am now going to go to Norman Cavell, Councillor Cavell. If you'd like to ask your question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's the salinity solutions that's been put forward. Absolutely fascinating. It's been alluded to also as producing some good results by Ross. I take it that's by comparison to PTP plants, which means it's somewhere in the sort of high 90%. So my questions are, how scalable is this solution? We're looking at putting PTP plants out in rural replacement septic tanks at the moment. So is there potential later on for the salinity solutions to go out there? And the other question is, affecting our calculations in the Taunton Dean area, the catchment area, we have 0.1 of a P unit to a property as a rough average. If salinity solutions are as effective as they are out at Wessex Water, does that mean that 0.1 of a P credit will now do 2 or 3 houses instead, if that's the case? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Norman.
Hello, Norman. Yes, salinity solutions. It is a modular system.
Would Kate be better on that one, do you think? I'm in my left ear.
Yeah.
Well, if you're not
Yes.
sure, but if you think she would be better, you know,
Over to Kate.
I will bring in Kate. It helps when they're in the room, doesn't it? Yeah, I know.
So, sorry all, and Paul is also equally capable of answering the question, but I'll pick that up. So the salinity solutions trial that we're doing at the moment has given some very promising results. Those water samples will be independently verified, and we're hoping to get those results back next week. In terms of your question, Norman, it will potentially, it's not going to necessarily offer a solution for all of the rural wastewater treatment works. That will be something that Wessex Water will need to consider as part of their asset management plan period. What we've asked in our nutrient mitigation fund bid to government is to fund the location of these units, subject to the outcomes of the trial, in the various river catchments, so the River Brue, the River Parrett and the River Tone, to provide immediate P credits so that they act as almost like a bridging solution to get us to 2030, when we know the wastewater treatment works are going to be required to be upgraded under the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill, provided that stays in its current form and gets enacted. What that means is that developers will be able to unlock housing at scale, and we will deliver the nature-based solutions alongside the salinity solutions unit. Now, that doesn't mean to say that it can't also be used in some of those rural communities. That isn't what we've featured in the bid thus far, and it is something that we can obviously look at, but it will be subject to the funding being received from government and how much of the funding we receive. But you're right in that it would reduce the requirement placed on developers. So as an example, if you're a developer building a house in Taunton, at the moment you would have to mitigate 1 milligram per litre of phosphates from your development. If we've got the salinity solutions units on board and we are able to keep those in place until 2030, those developers will just need to mitigate at the lower technically achievable limit, which is the 0.25. And in sort of that means it's a 75% reduction on the phosphate mitigation that they will need to find. And what we know is that makes it an awful lot easier for the majority of developers. And if we are successful with the nutrient mitigation fund bid, we're hoping to get to a place where we arrive at a sort of straightforward tariff. And that's what we understand developers have been asking for. They just want to know, just tell me what it's going to cost per dwelling. And we should then be able to get to a stage where we can give them a straightforward cost per dwelling for those areas that will feed into performing wastewater treatment works that will be upgraded to the technically achievable limit post 2030. But the salinity solutions results so far do offer the potential to help those other rural areas that won't be upgraded. We haven't featured that in the bid, but there are further rounds of opportunities to bid, and it is something that we can look at a later date. Does that deal with everything, Norman? Please come back if I haven't answered everything you're looking for.
It does indeed, Kate. That is a very great answer, and thank you very much. And what a fantastic potential this has to help easing the problem.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Kate, and thank you for your question, Norman. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'll try to keep it. I just wanted to recap on my previous question. You're taking quite often land out of use to do that anyway, and a lot of the sites aren't brownfield sites anymore, they're greenfield sites, so we're losing productive land. And then you add into that, we're also losing productive land to mitigate the phosphates. And I don't know which agency is in charge of what happens to that land that we're taking out in order to mitigate. But I would hope that there is some way we could, or they could try and work out a way of producing food in a minimum phosphate way, that we could still use land, although I'm not against having land. Yeah, but yeah, okay. So basically, I want to know which agency it is, and can we contact them?
Well, I guess it's DEFRA that's responsible for that ultimately. But you make a very good point about food security, and I think it's one that we're all very conscious of in taking land out of use. Unfortunately, food security is not a material planning consideration at the moment.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Last speaker, Henry.
To answer the question about phosphates in water, Wessex Water use 5,000 tonnes. The legal requirement is for about 20 houses that have lead pipes. They use the same chemical reaction with the phosphates that happens in the soil. It benefits them because all their metal pipes, the iron pipes, don't rust. Now, my question is going to be fundamental to this. If we can prove that there is no agricultural input into the phosphorus in the systems, what are you going to do about the mitigation? And I am meeting with Professor Penny-Johns in the near future to actually try and get papers written about this, because I'm getting so upset about being sidelined on every question I bring up about Seagas and Suncorp.
Well, Henry, that's not a question really for
Mr. Chairman, it's absolutely
would you let
the
me
fundamental to the paper we've been given.
Yeah, would you let me finish, please? You have been given the opportunity by the executive member to have a briefing, to have a one-to-one, to be part of the discussions for a lot of the things which you have raised. And as I say, if the legal officer tells me and suggests to me that this is not part of the remit of what this committee is here doing, I am more inclined to take her advice. And you heard Councillor White's offer to yourself, and that is, I think, more than fair for you to be part and you to put all your cases, all your points over to them, and for them to answer, and for you to hopefully get the questions you want. But if it is not the remit of this committee, it is not the remit of this committee. And whether any member on here likes it or they don't like it, that is the situation. And we've got another item on the agenda, which I think is just as important as the phosphates issue and linked to it. And I know you made a proposal and you said you had a seconder earlier, but in light of the invitation from Councillor White for you to attend their briefings and what have you, I am suggesting to members here that this committee notes the recommendations at 4 that this committee is being asked to consider, and also to look on page 372, the purpose of the report, and which has been laid out before you for this committee. And we are asked that this committee notes the content of this report, the activity across the 3 affected river catchments, which we may like or not like, or be to our liking, or think they should be delivered in a different way, which is now starting to unlock the delivery of housing and the affected development, which has been on hold due to the need to ensure nutrient neutrality. And also see the council's recent funding bid to the government, which is possibly going to be more essential to doing a lot of the things which have been discussed in this meeting today here. And I would hope that we are more than successful with that. So with that, that is what I am putting forward. And if I don't see a proposal from the floor, I will put it from the chair that we note the report on what I've just stated. And that is seconded by Councillor Andy Swanton. Now, have members got any problems with that? Henry, you've got all the opportunity, and I'm sure you'll get the backing of many members with it, because you are passionate about the issues, you know, involved with this. Okay, so.
Mr. Chair, can I just make a comment, please? Because you've addressed me in person. The situation is that we have a mitigation system based on a computer model where that computer model is now in doubt. Can I finish, please, Mr. Chairman? I fully understand what you're trying to do. I have been promised these meetings by the portfolio holder since January, and they have yet to take place. And that's why I'm beginning to get so frustrated. The portfolio holder can agree or disagree with me, but that's what she said in January. And that's why I'm trying to push to get the understanding of the lack of input from agricultural sources without completely destroying the mitigation system, because that's what's going to happen if we prove what I think is correct.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hobhouse. And as you know, the meeting is recorded and it's minuted, and I'm sure those comments will be recorded and taken up by the executive member with responsibility for it. So with that, members happy to note the report on everything which we've got there, please. Show of hands. Thank you very much. Any against? One against that, Angela. Any abstentions? 3 abstentions. That's fine. That is carried then. Right, we move on to item 9, the quarterly report on the planning service. And I will get the right officer here this time, and that is Paul. No, I did that on purpose. Sorry. It's welcome, Alison, to the meeting. Over to your good self.
Thank you, Chair. This is the first of quarterly reports as required by the Council's constitution, which agreed in February to provide quarterly officer reports from the area-based committees to monitor the decision-making and workload levels. So what we have provided here is information relating to the last full year, which is 22-23, in terms of the data, and that's because that's the last published information nationally that we have. So you'll see there's a covering report, and then Appendix A, which is attached to the report, sets out particular performance data. Next slide, please. So what we've tried to set out here is information on the volume of work received by each of the area teams and the waste and minerals team, and the information that's published nationally. We are operating on a system where we have 6 different computer systems which drive
Stations, yes. So.
sorry. What we've basically been collating information from 6 different computer systems because we haven't yet got a unified system looking at planning applications and planning matters across the new authority area. So that means in order to provide consistency in the data, we have been somewhat limited in terms of what we can provide. Next slide, please. So what we have pulled together is information relating to the planning applications which have been received across the council by area, and we've gone back to 2019-2020 up until the end of 2022-23 in order that you can see how much has been coming in over a period of time. We've included data on the national performance targets for Q4 of 2022-23, which, as I say, is the last published information. So we're still awaiting the published data for Q1 of 23-24. In addition, we've sought to provide some additional information which provides the context in which we're working, because it's not just planning applications that the planning service needs to deal with. It's pre-application inquiries, the appeal work, and importantly enforcement work that's in terms of cases on hand and resolved. And in that context, we've also provided information about the 5-year housing land supply and the housing delivery test position. So what I'm going to go through now is some slides which pull out some of the key data which is included in the appendix to the report, and covers the areas that I've set out in that slide. Obviously, very happy to answer as far as I can any other questions that members have, and comments that you might wish to make at the end. So if you go to the next slide. So this, and I appreciate it's difficult to read on the slide, the numbers. I can't read them very easily from here either, but this information is in the appendix. So hopefully you can refer to that. But that just gives you a context of the workloads by all the area teams in terms of major, minor and other applications being received for each of those quarters. And the graph on the right just gives you the trend in terms of applications received, and you can see that it's quite variable, and that's always one of the challenges for planning services, is we don't know what's going to come through the door. We have to deal with whatever does come through the door. So we're demand led rather than being able to predict what we will be coming to us. Next slide. So this graph just shows you the performance in terms of the areas in relation to major, minor and other applications which are part of the assessment that is made nationally. So I'm sure everyone's familiar with the fact that the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities assess the performance of all planning authorities across the country, and they set specific targets of 65% for major applications, 75% minor and 85% other, and that's what we're all measured against. So the diagram on the right just shows you the performance of the various area teams for the last quarter of 22-23 in relation to those targets. Next slide. And then these next four slides, 5 slides, probably show the various area teams' performance for from 2019 up to 2023 in relation to those targets. So just if you could just whiz through those. Yeah, that's north, east, south and west, and then there should be the minerals and waste team. And we've done that on a rolling figure basis, because the number of applications received in terms of minerals and waste is quite small. it's a better measure, but also because the government also look at our 2-year rolling performance figures, not just for minerals and waste, but for all applications. And if you fall below their threshold, you can be designated. So the government has actually written to 10 authorities earlier this year, threatening them with potential designation if their performance over a 2-year rolling period hasn't improved. And you'll see on that slide, those thresholds are set at 50% or more for major applications and 70% of minor or other applications in time. And so the table on the right just shows you where we are in terms of minerals and waste and all the areas, former districts, in terms of that performance. And obviously, you'll be pleased to note that we are not in the frame for potential designation. We are well above those thresholds that have been set. The importance of that, of course, is that if we were named, that what it means is that the government basically allow applicants to go straight to the planning inspectorate to determine their application. So in effect, local decision making is taken away from the authorities concerned. So the next slide just shows the number of pre-application inquiries, and really the reason for showing you that is just to indicate that there's a high volume of work in the services which relates to pre-application. So we're not just dealing with planning applications, but we're dealing with pre-application inquiries. And I suppose it's also worth noting that in the national data, there's quite a lot of applications that aren't covered by that. So things like the discharge of conditions applications aren't covered in the national data. So there's a whole range of work that's going on in planning services, which is over and above those applications that are measured nationally. Next slide, please. The next few slides just show the appeal performance. Obviously, you know, the appeals are determined by the planning inspectorate, and it's just worth keeping account of that because the government also measure the quality of service provided by local planning authorities on the basis of their appeals performance. So again, you know, I think it's useful to see that and to monitor it. So what we've done there is to provide the information over a period of time. So each area has got a slide on this. Yeah. Again, this is all in your information in the appendix. So I'm just going to whiz through those. Minerals and waste, it's not a fair representation because obviously there's very few minerals and waste plans, and it's worth noting, and I think this graph illustrates it quite eloquently, is that, you know, if you get one application which is dismissed or allowed, it makes a big difference to what your data looks like. Enforcement, I know that enforcement is a key concern for members. Obviously, it's a discretionary activity. We're not required to take enforcement action. We do have enforcement officers in all the area teams, and we do have an enforcement policy which was agreed by the council back in February. So on that basis, we have started to monitor the number of enforcement cases that are on hand. So you can see the volume of work that's coming into the various area teams and the minerals and waste team as well. We haven't been able to do that information historically because every area kept the information on a different basis. So we've only been able to start to collect that data from the start of the new authority on in a consistent way. So unfortunately, we're not able to provide you with the historical information on that. But going forward, obviously, we'll be able to do that in future. Next slide, please. So this just also just shows you over the last year, 2022-23, the number of enforcement cases that have been resolved or closed by area. So that just kind of, again, gives you an indication of the volume of work that's being undertaken by the various area teams. Obviously, one of the key considerations for us is whether or not we're meeting our 5-year housing land supply. Obviously, very important in terms of appeal decisions. And you'll see there the latest information that we have for the different areas. You'll note that Area West is split, and that's because we have historically got development plans in those areas which relate to the former Taunton Deane and the former West Somerset areas. And that's the basis on which we're currently monitored for 5-year housing land supply. So you'll see different figures for that. And you'll see that for Area West, we're just above the 5-year requirement for the former Taunton Deane area. And we're above both in the former Sedgemoor and the former West Somerset area. And then the 5-year land supply position is below for Mendip and South Somerset. Now, obviously, a large part of the reason for that is the conversation that we've had just before about phosphates and the fact that a large number of applications have been held up. Okay. So I think when we spoke to the chairs about this, they were keen to know what that actually meant in terms of either shortfall or surplus in relation to the housing land supply figures. So that just gives you what it means in terms of where we are in terms of the number of dwellings. Again, this is in the data pack. So that's the supply side. We're also measured by government in terms of delivery and how much housing is coming forward, and that's through the housing delivery test. Now, the latest published results are for 21-22, so they're somewhat out of date. The government have yet to clarify the criteria they will be using for 2022-23 and to publish for 21-22 and to publish that data. So this is quite old data, and we're waiting to hear what will be done. So the last published data is actually 2020-21, and you'll see that on the left-hand column there, and how the various area teams were performing in relation to that data. And then on the right-hand side column, we have calculated ourselves the information for 2021-22 in order to understand where we think we are. But that is based on the criteria as published. We anticipate there may be changes, but we have done the assessment on the basis of the current criteria. And you'll see that for most of us, we are above. There is a requirement if you're below 75% to publish an action plan. Area West did publish an action plan on the basis of that for 2020-21. Because the data hasn't been published and we don't know what the criteria is nationally, we haven't done any further work in relation to Area East, which is now coming out looking at the delivery is below. Again, probably attributed to the phosphate issue. And as you will have heard earlier, we have been lobbying central government to provide some dispensation on housing delivery test and 5-year housing land supply to take account of those authorities affected by nutrient neutrality. So those just give you the results in a different format. Okay, so that's the end of what I wanted to say. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Alison. As members can see, there's a lot of figures and a lot of graphs there, and I'm sure some of you've got 1 or 2 questions which you've got to ask Alison. But I mean, one of the issues I think which is important to take into consideration is the very severe shortage which we do have across the spectrum with the planning personnel, and that is not just this authority, that is a national problem. But it's very interesting, and I say the only thing is that one of the concerns that I have was sitting in on planning the area planning meetings and listening is that we avoid running anywhere near the risk and the level to have planning applications designated, because if we keep failing in certain areas and wherever that may be with not making the planning decisions for the right reasons, we lose that designation. This authority and any authority could be in serious trouble. But I'm sure you've got plenty of questions, but I think it's an interesting report, and it's going to be an interesting report moving forward. So I'll throw it out to the floor. Thank you. Steve, got you first, Steve.
Chairman, yes. As a new member, I was surprised to learn that enforcement wasn't a statutory requirement. Unfortunately, it's something that brings the whole planning system into disrepute if it's not applied. Now, Area South seems to have a larger amount of outstanding enforcement. Is there going to be a reallocation of enforcement officers to address this large amount? Because also it looks like they're tailing off in closed cases in the South quite dramatically as well. Thank you.
Enforcement is discretionary activity. It's up to each authority to determine what resources going to put into it. We do have a number of enforcement officers across the council area, and indeed I think South Somerset have, or Area South have currently got an additional 2 members of staff in their service to try and address the problem. Unfortunately, however many enforcement officers we will never have enough to deal with all the complaints that kind of come through the door. And, you know, I think from our point of view, we'd like to have more resource.
Steve? I mean, that's the best it can be answered. I mean, we all Michael?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, on the same subject of enforcement, the figures in front of us, I'm not sure if they represent the amount of enforceable cases that could be enforced if the council chose to, because it's not compulsory to do so, or the number of cases they've decided to take on and haven't processed or have processed. So the figures, I'm not sure what they're indicating. And the other question I was asking really was about officer numbers and how it would be interesting to see, relating to those figures, what the officer numbers were who are employed in enforcement for each area, so that we could get if there's any correlation between the two. But otherwise, the figures appear to be, I don't know. I don't know what to read into them. Thank you.
I would defer to Alison, but I thought one of the things you ask is in the report somewhere there about the enforcement officers. The number of enforcement officers is listed somewhere in the report. Am I correct, Alison?
Paragraph 18 sets out the number of enforcement officers. Just to clarify, the numbers in there are the number of complaints received. So it's the number of complaints received, and obviously since we've got the adopted enforcement policy, which has been in place since April for the new authority, we are obviously assessing the priority awarded to those complaints in accordance with those priority levels. So historically, we might have been dealing with them as different areas in a slightly different way and given slightly different priorities, but obviously we've now got a consistent policy in place. So we're closing cases on the basis of that. We're required as planners and as planning authority to negotiate wherever possible and to take a proportionate approach to enforcement action. So the number of notices does not necessarily represent the amount of activity that's going on, because we're required wherever possible to seek to resolve problems but through negotiation.
So those numbers are validated cases that you have, the officers have said, yes, this has been transgressed, but we now need to work out what we're doing about it. Is that what I'm understanding?
There isn't a validation process for enforcement. It's a complaint comes in, it will be registered, and then it will be given the priority according to the level of harm that the breach or activity warrants in accordance with the enforcement policy that the council has agreed.
It sounds like there's some grey areas there because, yes, sorry, no. I'm just trying to understand the figures, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We are asked to committee to note the content of the reason for the recommendation. So members, we note the report. Thank you very much, Alison, for that. Oh, thank you, Edric. I cannot see any other items on the agenda. Am I correct, Angela? Just making sure. I know you've had a busy few weeks of it here, and I don't want to miss anything, but I do, because Helen will give me hell if I don't say this, and I should have said it at the beginning. You have a little sheet in front of you with your name on the top where you were asked to fill out a little questionnaire. Can I ask that before you move from this room that you fill them out and give them to Angela, our officer, our scribe for this committee, before you leave? Thank you very much. Thank you.